Hello, Out and Equal. It is so great to be with you here tonight. This is my old stomping grounds of Orlando. This is where NSYNC was born back in 1995. And I have to go to this stage, I'm sorry. I feel like this has been neglected, so I need to come out here. And I have to say, I mean, I know we gays throw a good party, but this is the most ridiculous, over-the-top hurricane party I've ever seen in my entire life. And it's been amazing. And I loved getting to know all of you. I've met so many of you. Some of y'all might not remember me from last night. I know. Blue shirts. I know you blue shirts. But I just want to say this has just been such an incredible summit. 20 years of Out and Equal has been amazing. And the work that y'all have been doing has just been so helpful for everyone, especially, people like me, people like us in this room that just want equality and have people see us for who we are. I'm actually going to go back to the stage because I feel bad that my back is to all of y'all. So, and it's such a beautiful stage. It really is. Whoever made this stage it's incredible. It really is. I would like to tell you my coming out story. It really started at a very young age. Like many of us in this room, I'm sure, we knew at an early age. I was born in a small town called Laurel, Mississippi. Oh, someone's from Laurel? Oh, hi, yay, Laurel. I actually grew up in Ellisville, Mississippi, just 5 minutes next door because we didn't have a hospital. We had about 2,000 people in our town. And coming from such a small town, it's great because you feel so safe. You know everyone, but also it's scary when at 5 years old you realize that you're gay. And my grandfather, he was a big photographer of the town of Laurel, so basically that made us royalty in this town. I mean, everyone knew our family, and everyone was kind of in each other's business. You went to church 3 times a week, you played sports, and it was all about your family. You didn't really look outside your town. So I very clearly remember when I was in 5-year-old kindergarten, there was a little boy named Chad that I had an innocent crush on. At 5 years old, I knew that. And I remember my teacher, she'd play games with us. We were 5 years old. And in order to put us in our teams, she would take out these cards that were colored. And I remember seeing Chad in the corner, and he got the color blue. And I made sure that I got that color blue to be on his team, and which is probably why the color blue is my favorite color today. And it was interesting because I knew even at 5 years old that being gay was wrong, that it was against everything that I was taught in church, and I just thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't think any gay person existed in my little town. I mean, I was the only gay in the village. And as great it is to be such aware of yourself at such a young age, it also was terrible because at such a young age, you begin to feel so lonely. And you start to feel like, no one will ever be able to accept who you are, and you'll have to lie and hide yourself for the rest of your life. And that's just terrible for any child to have to go through without any kind of support. And that's why it's so important that we show our support in the workplace and all that, because, you don't know what people are going through in their personal lives and the issues that they're dealing with. Being 5 was the easiest part. I think my whole gay life, I have these milestones. 5 was one of my first memories of being gay. 6 through 13 was a breeze because no one really, was looking at me to date little girls. I was very outgoing and probably needed to be on Ritalin at that time. But I never thought of myself as being, flamboyant, but I'm sure a lot of the parents were like, yeah, that one's probably going to end up, being gay. And then it got a little more tough when I, turned about, 12, 13, when I moved from Ellisville, Mississippi to the city of 5,000 people in Clinton, Mississippi. Yeah, we thought it was the city. So I went up there, and that was when boys my age were really into sports. And if you know anything about me, I suck at every sport known to man. I mean, I'm just terrible at it. So the older I got and the more my friends started finding those sports that they were really great at, I couldn't find anything. And then I started getting scared that people were going to figure out, oh my gosh, he might be gay because he's terrible at sports. I mean, those are the stupid things you think as a kid. So I moved to this town in Clinton, and thank goodness I was so lucky to move to a town that was all about music. You know, it was half sports, half music. So it was cool to actually be in chorus. And we had this show choir in Clinton called Attaché. It was the #1 show choir in the world. Yeah, it's like jazz hands. And all my friends were in music. All the cool kids were in music, played sports and did all that. So it was never an issue for me to be able to do music and people look at me, you know, as different or, you know, call me the F word. So you know, it was a very easy transition for me, you know, to be in that age and into high school. And what also made it very easy for me too, that no one was looking at me, one of my best friends was very flamboyant as a young kid. And everyone always said, oh, you know, he's gay. And it always took everything off of me. I felt like no one was looking at me because he was kind of the scapegoat for my whole high school years. But then it got to the point where I was 15, 16 years old, and that's when all my friends started dating and losing the virginity and asking people to dances and having all these, you know, great crushes and first dates. And I knew that I was going to have to do something. I knew I was going to have to, you know, date girls. Because I was very religious at the time, I knew that I would never act on being gay, that I would definitely meet a girl, that I would marry and have kids, and I would just have to hide it the rest of my life because that's just what I thought everyone did. And a lot of people from Mississippi still do to this day, sadly. Then it was around 16. I remember it was homecoming. It was homecoming dance, and I was going to the dance with a girl. I was very nervous because you know how those parties end up afterwards, and I didn't know if I was going to have to, like, you know, have sex with her and all this and all my, you know, I was so frustrated and scared. And all of a sudden I get a phone call right before the homecoming dance, and it was from this 14-year-old kid named Justin Timberlake. And it was him and his mother on the phone and saying, you know, we started this band in Orlando called NSYNC, and we would love you to come down and see if, you know, you like the group because we need a bass singer to join. And I was so excited because I was like, okay, I don't have to worry about going to that after party at homecoming, you know? So I had to go to bed early because I got to go to Orlando in the morning. So I was like, whew, another escape from my reality. It didn't take me long to join the group. The next day, met the guys here in Orlando, fell in love with them, and immediately decided I'm moving to Florida and I'm going to do this singing. We were an a cappella group at the time, and all we cared about was being hired by Disney to be the a cappella group here at Disney World. That's all we wanted to do. Yeah, it's true. That's as big as we thought it would ever get. We're like, please hire us, Disney. And the mouse did really help start our career. Thank you very much. So then it got real easy where usually 16-year-olds have to deal with, you know, first dating and all that. I got to focus on just work. And I had a good excuse. It was always excuses after excuses of why I didn't have to deal with sexuality. So, you know, the first year of our career, it was, you know, pretty tough, but we worked every single day. So there was no time to have a relationship or even think about anything like that. And the one day, and this changed my life, I never really hid anything about myself. I was just who I was, very outgoing. And the day that all that changed, we were, I don't know if anyone's from Orlando, but the Dr. Phillips area, we all lived in a house and on Sand Lake Road. And all of us guys lived in the house, and Chris Kirkpatrick, who's in my group, went on a road trip to Texas with our choreographer, who was, you know, openly gay. And, you know, we all loved him, and it was great. But he went on this road trip, and I remember the guys having a house meeting, and we all had a meeting to wonder, does this mean Chris might be gay? And it's not like they were against it, but they were so scared that would ruin any chance we had to becoming a big group or famous at all. And I knew then at that moment that I was never going to be able to tell any of the guys, anyone, because I was afraid I was going to get kicked out of the band and it was going to ruin these guys' future career. I became the introvert. I became, I mean, if you know me from the NSYNC days, I was the shy one because I was so afraid to speak. I was so afraid to talk because of everyone judging everything that you say. I remember someone telling me that if you use the word so in conversation, that you're gay. Like so this. So was out of my vocabulary. Never said so. In fact, I didn't want to say a word at all. And, the good thing is, too, I mean, I had a real Southern voice back then, too. I mean, it was bad. So I kind of sounded gay anyway. So I could, yeah, it worked. And so after that moment that we had with Chris, it really scared me. And that's when I really just became, very shy and didn't want to talk to anyone. And throughout, the next few years with NSYNC, it was pretty easy to hide it because you always had an excuse of, well, I'm on the road, I'm all this. But the older we got, the more breaks we started taking, and all the guys started having relationships and girlfriends. And, I would have the girlfriend. I knew that I wasn't into her like I knew I would be into guys, but I thought that's what love was. I dated this girl, Danielle Fishel. Remember Topanga from Boy Meets World? Yeah, her. And she was so great. I loved her. I mean, I really thought I loved her. I just didn't realize I just wanted to be her best friend. That was the difference. So when everyone started having some time off and being able to have these relationships, I didn't know what I was going to do because I was definitely at the age now where if people didn't see me with girls, then they're going to talk because that's just what naturally a 19-year-old does when they have time off, find a girl. So I really made sure that I kept myself busy. I started, a production company. I started managing artists just to keep myself so busy on our off time so I would just have excuses not to date, which gets really old. And I really told myself, because again, at that time I was very, very conservative and religious. I'm a Southern Baptist. I kept telling myself that, I would never really act on it. But then, the older I got, I started meeting people that were in the closet. And you started having those experiences with guys. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe if I just try it one time, I'll get it out of my system. I'll have that memory. It'll last me forever. Great, awesome. It made it worse because I just wanted more. Yeah, it's true. Because for the first time I realized this is what felt natural to me. This is what it feels like to actually have a real crush on someone. It just felt real. But then again, it felt very sad because I knew I would never be able to tell anyone about it or even really, date someone. Then it was towards the end of NSYNC, and I knew we were about to go on hiatus. And at this point, I still had never had a boyfriend. I'd had a couple of, experiences with guys, but, it's kind of like that college thing. People say, oh, I did that in college. So, right before we were going to take this 6-month hiatus, I was nervous because I knew in 6 months there was no way I was going to be busy every single day. And right as I was kind of freaking out about that, I get a call from my manager, Cindy, at the time, and she said, Lance, people called and they want you to fly to space and be the youngest person to space. I was like, okay, first off, I knew it was Punk'd by Ashton Kutcher because that show had just come out. And I was like, Cindy, it's a joke. Like, it's Ashton Kutcher, like, don't fall for it. 2 weeks later, she goes, no, they really want you to go to Russia and train and fly to space. And I said, okay. Flew me to Moscow. It was real. I couldn't believe what I was about to do, but in the back of my mind, I was like, yes, another excuse not to have to, date. Like, send me to Russia. And it worked for 6 months. It was so great. But here's the scary part. I mean, Russia can be very scary. I mean, I've always heard, really crazy things, especially LGBTQ people in Russia is just not an easy place to live, especially this was, oh my gosh, 14 years ago. So in my mind, I kept thinking, okay, they have ways of telling if you're gay or not. I mean, they do. I have KGB stuff, I know, so I went in like, okay, and the first week was medical testing. I'm like, I wonder if there's a way they can medically test if I am or not. So I'm so scared, and I didn't want to be shot in the back alley in Russia. So I do my medical testing, and it's very backwards and archaic the way they do some of their testing, but I had to do a colonoscopy for one of the tests in front of all these doctors, no sedation at all, zero, yeah. Didn't even know I was doing it until they're like, yep, bend over. I'm like, okay. So they're doing the procedure, and I have tears coming down my eyes because it hurts so much, and all the doctors are laughing in Russia. And at this time I spoke zero Russian, so I didn't know what they were saying, so I asked my interpreter, what is everyone saying? And they're laughing, saying, well, we know now you're not gay. I was like, okay. The amount of gay jokes that I heard, and it was awful. I was so scared, and at that time, I actually had met someone that I was really into. And they came to visit me in Russia, and I was so scared because we couldn't be with each other. We couldn't be seen really with each other. I was afraid to look at them a certain way, or they would like read it, because I would find tracking devices in my head, that type of stuff, and they were always watching you. I mean, there was one time where it was one of my first weeks of training over there, and it's a military base, and inside the military base is the cosmonaut training facility, and only cosmonauts and professors and everyone can go in. But it was a weekend because they condensed all my lessons of years into about 6 months. I had to work on the weekends, but the gates were closed and they were locked. So I didn't know how to get in, and I was late for class, and so I climbed the wall. And so did the class, it was fine. The next weekend, I again forgot the gate was closed, but I found another gate that was way back, whatever. I was like 5 minutes late, apologizing to this professor. And that was when I knew I was being watched, because he goes, oh, well, why didn't you just climb over the wall again? There was no one around. I mean, constantly watched. So it was just that fear of someone finding out, the fear that I could actually be hurt for being who I am, really it can scar you. I mean, it really did. And I was just so confused. But I also knew the older I was getting, the more that there's no way I can hide this anymore. I couldn't fool myself into thinking that I was going to marry a girl anymore. I mean, there was no way of faking that. And I didn't want to fake it at this point. So when I got back from Russia, we were going to start the new NSYNC album, but it ended up being another 6-month hiatus. The worst news ever, because I'm like, oh no, now I'm probably going to have to deal with this. But immediately went back to Orlando, fell in love with someone, and had an amazing relationship that I thought it was amazing. Dated, for 2 years. I came out to my friends. It felt so great. That's what I thought coming out was. I was so wrong, because I didn't want to publicly come out for the fear of destroying NSYNC's career. I kept that all private, and I just wanted my friends to know, and obviously the person I was dating. And I realized then that it wasn't real, and that wasn't really coming out, because I would have to go in one door, he would go out the other. That was not a real relationship. We felt like we were in prison the whole time, and it ultimately destroyed any relationship I was ever in, because we had to hide it, and that just wasn't fair. Then we get to the point where People Magazine calls, and I went to this town called P-Town. I'm sure a lot of you know P-Town. I didn't know what P-Town was at the time. It's a really great, amazing gay town. And I went with my boyfriend, and I was having a great time, going to the clubs. Didn't think anyone cared at this time. And I didn't know that I was standing next to someone from some paper. And they're like, so, you're gay? I'm like, yeah, I am. He's like, okay. That's when everyone started calling. And all the magazines said, look, we're running the story with or without you. Would you like to say something? And I had 24 hours to decide if I was coming out to the world, and what do I say? That was the scariest moment of my life, because on one hand, I definitely wanted to tell my story, because it was time. I wanted to be myself for the first time. But in 24 hours, I didn't think I had the right information to come out. I wasn't educated about the community at all. I was hidden from it. I didn't want to even accept it at all my whole entire life. So in 24 hours, I was doing an interview, and it was on the stands the next day. I was so scared because I did not want this to hurt the LGBT community. I thought, oh gosh, a boy band are coming out. Here we go. They're going to make fun of me so much. And back then, 14 years ago, it was just a different temperature. You didn't know if your career would just be destroyed. You didn't know if people were going to hate you. And I was so surprised at how everyone took it. The press took the high road, and they basically were like, who cares anymore? And I mean, from Jay Leno, David Letterman, everyone just really made it such a positive story, and it made me so happy to see that people supported gays. I've never really seen this in public before. So that was just an incredible experience, and I felt like, and I even said it in my first interview, that I didn't feel like I don't want to be a poster child for being gay. I don't know anything about it. I don't want to ride in the parades. I don't want to be doing speeches like this because I don't know what I'm talking about yet. I don't deserve it at all. And a couple months later, I remember I went to my first HRC dinner. And they were given my boyfriend and I a visibility award for my coming out story. And I was really excited to be there because it was the first time meeting a group of my community. And I was so disappointed that night because during my speech, there was 2 tables in the front that flipped me off and walked out. And that was the first time I realized, oh my gosh, wow, my own community has turned on me, and right at the beginning, I felt like I had zero support. And that's why I disappeared for a little bit. I went away. I realized I need to educate myself. I need to really understand what the needs of this community is, where I belong in this community. And I'm proud to say that the last 10, 12 years, I have educated myself. And I've been trying to do as much as I can to spread the word of equality and just acceptance of us, because it is really all about visibility. When you get to know a gay person, it changes your mind. And that's why I'm so blessed to be in the position I am today, because I hope that I am helping change people's minds. Yeah. Now, I tell people all the time, I am so lucky to be born gay. I am so lucky, and it's so weird for me to say that because I could never imagine, being lucky. Because I was born gay, it made me see the world differently. And I could have been, oh my gosh, if I was born straight in Mississippi, I could have been just this awful white homophobic guy that just had such a small mind. But thank God I was born gay, because I see the world differently. I have an open mind, and I realize all the bull crap that goes on in this world that just isn't true. It's just not true. And it kills me when people say, oh, you're not born with it, you choose that. Oh, really? Tell 5-year-old little Lance Bass that he chose to be gay in kindergarten. It just doesn't happen. But I thank you so much for having me here. This has been really an eye-opening experience for me. I had no idea that we as a community get so much support from these amazing businesses and corporations. It is so key to have y'all's support, because it validates all of us to the world stage. It really does. And it has helped, move us forward so fast and so great. But we have a long way to go, And I'm just encouraged to see all of your faces right here, because we're all in it together. And we're gonna make this place a lot better and a better world. So thank you so much for having me. Have a great summit. Enjoy your time. I'll see you at the parks. There you go.